Hi, I'm Dr. Tami Moser. I'm with the Journey Coach, and at the Journey Coach, we help professionals prepare to be successful in their doctorate journey. That includes all the way from choosing a program through completing their dissertation. Today, we're going to spend some time talking about the juggle struggle. And this particular video is focused on the juggle you have during coursework and some of the challenges associated with starting the doctorate process. The juggle struggle really kind of encompasses areas of our life that we have to start making sacrifices in and make choices about how we want to approach making sure that we still have the life we want while working on our doctorate. So let's get started talking about the juggle struggle and some of the challenges you're going to face. So if we break it down, we really have to find a way to balance working in our coursework, right? So we're generally speaking, adding this new level of focus on education. And even if you've come from a master's degree, the type of work, the quality of work, the quantity of work in a doctorate is significantly different, which is something that we can talk about in another video. But as you actually start working through the coursework, you have to find a way to spend more time on the work you need to do. So that's the first area you're trying to balance and juggle. The next is your family, right? Now, this can look different for different people. You may be single with children. You may be married without children. You may be married with children. You may have adult children and a husband at home. You may have children and be working or taking care of your parents, or you may just be focused on your parents. Or you may be someone who has to juggle siblings, parents, just the overall family demands, but maybe you're single and so your time at home looks a little different. Whatever category you fall in, this is an area that also becomes part of the juggle, right? How do I actually maintain the relationships I need to maintain in conjunction with my family members? And what types of events are non-negotiable with my family, and where am I sacrificing in this, in terms of this juggle, right? Then I have my career. So this is another area you're juggling, right? So career, what does it look like? Where are you at? Do you just have a job, or are you actually already in a career that you're building? And those are two very distinctly different things, right? A job, you go in, you do the job, get done, get out, earn your paycheck and move on. A career, you're building something, the investment may be a little higher in terms of time and commitment and projects that you may take on that are outside or on top of a normal workload. So when you look at your career, that also is part of your juggle, right? Because you've got things that are also non-negotiable there that have to be done. There could be travel involved in that pops up at different times of the year, either that's consistent or it's a variable. And you also have to take that into consideration. Then there's another part of this juggle struggle that you have to really take into consideration, and that's your physical and mental and emotional well-being. This is an area that often gets set to the side. There's discussion about the freshman 10, but nobody talks about the doctorate 20 or 30 or 40, as you really sacrifice a lot of time that would normally be spent on your physical, mental, emotional well-being. And as the stress increases, some of those challenges also increase, especially if you're not trying to balance that. So you're juggling these four very distinct areas. And part of what you really have to think through is where your focus is. So you can actually get an attachment associated with this particular video that can give you information, and that will be found down in the description. You can download this form, and on it, it actually will walk you through an exercise to just think through, what does my life look in these four areas, and how am I going to juggle the non-negotiables? and what is negotiable. So this is one of the first things you need to really think through in all 4 of these areas. Part of it is time commitment. And another is, what do I really have to make sure stays priority as we go through? So let's take coursework. If you're starting a doctorate, you need to really figure out in this first course what kind of time commitment you're talking about for you. Now, this is a real variable, although some people may go, well, we just understand what we're doing, but that's not the case. You need to really think through your first course. And if you've already had multiples, then you can do some reflection here. What kind of time, what kind of assignments are generally due every week, every 2 weeks? So do the courses tend to be broken down in 2-week modules, 1-week modules? What kind of work is included? So if you're in an online program, you're generally speaking, you can't submit discussions after the discussion window ends. So it's a very hard, firm deadline. However, you may have some wiggle room in assignments, but there are some programs where they have a no tolerance policy on anything late. And so their faculty does not have the ability to give you an extension. It's just, if it's not in by the deadline, it's a 0. And you have many of those add up and you failed a course. So there's deadlines you have to meet, and there's time commitments associated with that. So how long does it take you to read an article? What kind of material do they normally provide you to use? How much, have you learned how to scan an article so that you can actually move through material much quicker than a deep read, right? And so I have a video on the channel that actually is just, as you're starting, how do you deal with your material? There's also one on discussion. So we'll link those below, right? What kind of discussions? How do I approach a discussion board? So as you're looking at this, you're reflecting on or gaining information on how long it takes you to write a page. How many papers, how many pages in a course do you normally need to produce? So when are you going to focus on writing? So is it going to be in the morning before everybody gets up in your house? Is it going to be late at night after everybody goes to bed? Is it over lunch during work? And often it's going to be a combination of those things. So, when are you clearest mentally to be able to write so that your writing time is the most effective and efficient? Reflection here, because before you can juggle efficiently and effectively, you've got to get some information surrounding these areas. So then let's go to family. Depending on the relationships you're juggling here, you may have different people you need to talk to and gain information. So if you have a significant other and a partner, this is always the person I recommend you start with, because you need to have a real conversation with them about the time you're going to have to commit for coursework. And so this is a conversation you need to have, right? I've got to juggle all this coursework. It's got to be fit into the time and the day. Maybe it's at night, it's early morning. And you've got to, you're making a commitment of probably 2 to 4 years invested in coursework. So this is going to be an ongoing thing, and maybe conversation. I really recommend every 6 months, no less than every year, because priorities change and what you need to juggle change, and how well you're juggling everything. You may have a different perspective on that than your partner or your children. So if you have a partner, start with them. And then it's a conversation of what things are non-negotiable. You need to evaluate the quality of the relationship at this point in time. If you go, this partnership is incredibly important to me that I maintain, and when we're done with this doctorate, I still have a partner, or our relationship is still in a good place, what is it going to take to do that? And there are so many people who enter this stage of a doctorate and do not have those conversations, and their relationship falls apart, or it's an added stress throughout the program. And we'll talk about the juggle struggle when you get to your dissertation, because while the categories remain the same, what you actually have to deal with shifts. So you have these conversations. If you have children, it may be, what's non-negotiable? Well, I want my children to still know I love them. And for, Sally, that means that she's playing soccer, and through the fall, every Saturday from this period to this period, from noon to 6, I'm going to be at the soccer field. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be at the soccer field and also be reading an article or doing something like that. That's for you to decide. It's part of the juggle, but you're going to physically be present, and this is time dedicated to Sally, your child, not to your coursework. So there could be some very distinct non-negotiables. It could be a family vacation that you take every year that really for your partner is non-negotiable, that you're going to do that. So this is part of the identification, right? Then I move on to, what do I have going on in my career or my job? How much time and energy does that take? It's going to be very different if I'm an hourly worker and I go in and I just get to work my shift and there's no extra stress to that and I get to leave. However, it could be that I have research that I have to do. I have reports that have to be done. For some of you in education, you may have accreditation site visits coming up. And so that's usually a 1 to 2 year planning horizon. And then you have site visits. You may have travel that has to happen. You may have international travel that occurs that you have to go every August and spend 3 weeks in China. I mean, I've seen all of this where there's travel internationally, and it may be connected to family, but it also very often is connected to career. So this is part of the juggle, right? And it can be a real part of the juggle struggle. It is a struggle to juggle all of these things effectively and not have anything drop that can be detrimental. So same thing with career, because this is going to impact your stress levels. It's going to impact your work on your coursework. You may want to, if your program has any variables and you're actually able to get some extensions, maybe you need to make those arrangements when the class starts because you've already thought this through and know in week 4 this is going to come up. Or you go, I've got to get that work done early before I go because there is no give in the program. Planning, right? Reflection, taking a look at what you have coming up. And so sometimes it might mean I'm going to have to say no to this trip. I'm not going to be able to go. I'm going to have to step back and say no to this family vacation and just go, I can't go. My partner's going to take my kids and go to, the reunion for his family or her family, but I'm not going to be attending. So you're building this understanding of what balls you're trying to keep in the air. Now, this last one is the one that we most often, whether you're male or female, tend to throw out the door and just go, this is what I've got to give up. My recommendation is you identify some non-negotiables here too. I've had the extra 40 pounds, 50, actually it was an extra 50 pounds after my PhD. And I only gained 30 after the doctorate, DBH, but both times, you're more sedentary, you're sitting at a computer, working more often, and it can have an impact on everything. The emotional and mental health part is part of juggling effectively. The more stress you're under because balls are dropping, people are upset, you feel threatened in the career because of it, you're going to get more and more stressed. And as your stress levels go up, you're going to drop more balls. So, this is to me something you do every semester. And I would even recommend that at the beginning of every year, you got another year in the program taking classes starting in January. It's like, I'm going to sit down in January. I'm going to reflect on what worked well this last year. I'm going to think through these categories. And now I'm going to sit back and really go, what worked, what didn't, what's non-negotiable this upcoming year. What am I going to have to set aside and sacrifice? And sometimes some of those balls you're used to juggling, you purposefully take out of the mix and set to the side and go, there are no family vacations this year. In 3 years, I'm done with this. And we can go back to the normally scheduled program. But right now, this is really going to shift some things. Maybe I take Christmas off and that's when we really have family time. You have to make the decision. I can't, and there is nobody who can really tell you how or which of these balls stay in the air for you and what's non-negotiable. What I am going to say is the better you are at defining what should be juggled, and the better you are at taking the things out and setting them to the side that shouldn't be a priority right now, can come out of the mix, the more likely you are to have fewer balls drop. And the more likely you are to have lower stress levels. So when you're talking about your physical health, that's nutrition, that's movement, those are things you need to think through. When you're talking about your mental and emotional health, many times I don't want my kids to feel devalued or provide them no attention. But that doesn't mean there aren't some boundaries for your kids too. So, the purpose of this video is to really identify these things, and one, to tell you this is normal. It's part of the challenge of completing a doctorate. It is the challenge, and what's being juggled is a little different for everybody, although those categories exist for everyone. So part of being successful here in juggling all of the things you need to be successful in a doctorate and be able to get through the coursework phase is being able to step back and understand where you're at, what you need to do, what kind of commitments you're actually making, and really truthfully evaluating your ability to successfully keep all that going and not dropping any of those balls. And identifying where the most likely ball drops are and being able to say, this is most likely what will fall apart. And so I need to rethink how I'm handling that, how I'm putting it in the mix, and what is most valuable to me. So what I'm going to suggest now is that, one, you take a deep breath and you just realize this is part of getting through a doctorate, and that journey you take, it transforms you in many ways, and it has you look at things in your life even differently, because that's part of what you have to figure out as you're moving through this. Please take a moment to download the form. The form just gives you some checklists, some reflection points, and helps you really step back and go, okay, these are some of the areas I need to think through, reflect on, make notes about, have conversations surrounding, so I can really make some purposeful choices surrounding what I'm juggling and how I'm doing it and what's most important. And I think that purposeful decision-making is one of the most valuable aspects of this, because at least then you acknowledge what's part of your particular juggle struggle. As always, I wish you the best in your doctorate journey. If there is any questions you have surrounding this, comments you want to make to help others, or suggestions you would like to make for other videos you'd like to see, please take time to comment. We greatly appreciate it. And if you like this video, you want to see more content, you want to be alerted when it comes out, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And I'll see you next week.